Okay, so you've got this brilliant, buzzing idea for a research project, right? A question that just, I don't know, demands an answer.
Yeah, that initial spark.
Exactly. But then you're staring at a blank page, and that excitement just kind of drains away as you wonder, how on earth do I turn this spark into a concrete, fundable plan, something that actually gets approved? That feeling, that initial mountain of a research proposal, it can feel pretty daunting.
It absolutely can. But here's the thing. It's not really a roadblock. It's actually your very first, and I think incredibly powerful step in charting a clear path forward for your research.
Okay.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of research proposals. We're going to pull back the curtain a bit on what supervisors, committees, funding bodies, what they're really looking for when they read your proposal.
Think of this as your essential guide, maybe, understanding not just what goes on those pages, but why it matters and, well, how to craft a proposal that truly stands out. We'll talk about what a proposal fundamentally is, how to pinpoint your research problem and that all-important gap in existing knowledge. Then we'll move into shaping compelling research questions, building a robust methodology, and finally, kind of nailing down all those practicalities that make your research feasible.
And what's truly fascinating, I think, is that a research proposal is far more than just, a descriptive document. It's a compelling argument. It's a carefully constructed pitch, really.
A pitch. Interesting.
Yeah, your goal is to convince others that your proposed project is not only significant and original, but crucially, entirely achievable within the given constraints, like time and money.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. What is a research proposal at its core? Our sources define it as, well, a formal, structured document providing details about the research you intend to undertake. And it's specifically designed to persuade an evaluation committee, maybe a funding agency, or your supervisor that your research is undeniably worthwhile.
And it serves a vital dual purpose for you, the researcher. It forces you to clarify your thoughts, organize your ideas, think critically. I mean, it's your chance to demonstrate that this project is not only a great idea,
right,
but that you're fully capable of conducting it within a realistic time frame and with the available resources. Ultimately, it has to answer those three core questions: what you plan to accomplish,
okay,
why you want to do it, that's your justification,
yeah,
and how you were going to do it, your methodology.
That what, why, and how framework. It sounds simple, but I guess it's surprisingly consistent, even though proposals themselves can vary wildly in length.
Oh, absolutely. You might see a concise 3 to 5 pages for an initial application, maybe.
Yeah, like an expression of interest.
Exactly. Or a really comprehensive 30, 50 pages for a detailed candidature confirmation, sometimes even covering the first 3 chapters of a PhD dissertation.
Wow.
But regardless of length, a strong proposal secures those essential resources: financial, logistical, academic support, and it demonstrates your preparedness. It also, importantly, reduces risk for the sponsoring body. It proves you've done the deep thinking required for success.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's dive into that core why. Identifying your research problem, the critical gap in knowledge, and your unique contribution. This all kicks off presumably with your research background or introduction.
Precisely. That section sets the stage. It pinpoints the issue or question you're tackling. And it requires a kind of mini literature review, as you said, to show what's already known in the field.
So you're showing you haven't just plucked this idea out of thin air.
Exactly. And defining the research problem isn't just pointing at something that exists. It's about diagnosing an issue or a phenomenon that hasn't been researched, or at least hasn't been explored in its specific aspects. You need to show that the existing literature hasn't fully addressed it.
When I first thought about research, I always assumed a gap meant finding a topic literally no one had ever touched, like 0 papers on it.
Yeah, that's a common thought.
Well, you're suggesting it's a lot more nuanced than that.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in fields like the social sciences, a completely untouched topic is incredibly rare.
Yeah.
What we're really looking for often is a gap where research has been conducted, but perhaps only, let's say, to a certain extent or from a particular perspective.
Okay, like how?
Well, think of a historical gap, for instance. Maybe a study was done years ago, but conditions have drastically changed. You wouldn't apply findings from pre-2007 UK REITs performance to today's market, would you? The context is totally different.
No, definitely not. That makes perfect sense. Or maybe a disciplinary gap, where a topic has been extensively studied by, say, urban planners, but never really looked at by economists.
Exactly.
And you realize those different lenses could reveal entirely new insights.
Precisely. Or a geographical gap. Maybe a topic is well-researched in one country, like Holland, but completely unexplored in another, like Italy. Or even within the same country, studied in London, but not Manchester, for example.
Right.
And then there's the comparative gap, where a topic has simply never been investigated on a comparative basis. Imagine comparing construction procurement methods across Italy and Germany side by side. Each of these creates a clear point of departure from existing knowledge. It shows where your work fits in and adds something new.
Okay, so once you've pinpointed that gap, that point of departure, the next crucial step is articulating your research's significance. Why is your specific problem worth investigating? What original contribution will your research actually make to the existing body of knowledge? That's the novelty part, I guess.
It is, but it's also more than just novelty for novelty's sake.
Yeah.
You need to explicitly outline how the outcomes will benefit various stakeholders.
Right. Who cares?
Exactly. Will it advance theory or resolve dilemmas for academia? Will it improve lives for individuals or communities? Maybe inform business strategies for industry, or guide decision-making for policymakers. You need to be clear about the so what.
So what does this all mean for someone actually sitting down, writing their proposal? How do you make that why, that significance, really jump off the page?
This is where you need to be masterfully persuasive.
Yeah.
It's simply not enough for your topic to be unique. It needs to be useful, value-creating. And even if the value seems glaringly obvious to you,
Yeah.
you absolutely must explicitly state it. Don't assume the reviewer sees it. Think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe a study on factors influencing makeup brand advocacy sounds a bit niche initially,
Okay.
but clearly articulating how identifying those factors could revolutionize marketing strategies for cosmetics companies, that adds undeniable commercial value. You have to paint that picture vividly for the reader.
Make it obvious. Don't make them work for it.
Exactly. Spell it out.
Okay. Once you've really nailed down your problem and gap, the next logical step seems to be crafting your research questions and objectives. These should flow directly from those established gaps, right? Often phrased as how questions.
Absolutely. They flow directly. Then you articulate your research aim. That's your broad, overarching goal for the entire study. It should be concise, clear, and use strong, doable verbs like to investigate, to examine, to evaluate, or to assess. Generally, you have one main aim, and it really sets the overall direction.
Okay, let's make this concrete again with an example. Say your broad aim is to investigate the impact of real estate ownership registration on SMEs' access to formal capital in Botswana and the Netherlands. That's quite specific already.
It is. And then your objectives become the specific, measurable, and operational steps that tell the reader exactly how that overall aim will be achieved. They need to be SMART, remember. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound.
The classic SMART goals.
Exactly. And typically, 3 to 5 objectives are sufficient, even at the PhD level, because each one represents a tangible piece of work. So, for your example, our objectives might be to examine the nature of capital constraints among SMEs, to assess the impact of real estate ownership registration on SMEs' access to capital, to evaluate factors responsible for rejecting capital demand, and maybe to investigate differences between the two countries. See how each one is a concrete, actionable step you'll take.
Yeah, they're like mini projects that add up to the main aim. And what about hypotheses? You sometimes see those.
They do. Hypotheses are essentially testable propositions about relationships between variables. They're often just a rephrased research objective.
Okay.
Our sources suggest, and I tend to agree, that if you state clear objectives, you usually don't need separate hypotheses.
Okay.
They basically serve the same purpose, clarifying what you intend to find out, so stating both can sometimes feel a bit redundant.
Right. And this all ties into something you mentioned earlier, the golden thread.
Yes, absolutely crucial. Your topic, your research aim, your objectives, they must be perfectly consistent and clearly aligned. This golden thread has to run seamlessly through your entire proposal, demonstrating a coherent, well-thought-out plan. It's what makes your proposal feel solid, bulletproof.
A well-written proposal really does reflect a well-organized mind, doesn't it? I've definitely seen proposals that start talking about burnout in graduate students.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, in the methodology, they're discussing recruiting undergraduate.
Oh, yeah. Big red flag.
It just breaks that thread immediately. It signals a lack of clarity, or maybe that the plan hasn't been fully thought through.
Precisely. Inconsistency like that is a huge warning sign for reviewers. It implies you haven't fully connected the dots between your problem, your plan, and your target population.
Okay, let's move to the foundation of your argument, the literature review. What's its primary mission in a proposal context? It's not the full chapter yet.
No. Definitely not. Its main purpose in the proposal is to be a systematic, explicit, and reproducible method of identifying, evaluating, and synthesizing the existing relevant work. It shows you've truly done your homework, that you're familiar with the current state of the research in your specific area.
So proving you know the field.
Yes, but crucially, it's where you demonstrate the gap in that existing research, the gap that your study will fill. So it provides the direct justification for your work. And as a bonus, it also informs your methodological decisions by showing how other researchers have approached similar topics.
And as you said, in a proposal, you're not writing a massive dissertation-length literature review, are you?
No, definitely not. It's generally brief and really to the point. You cite the key relevant literature that clearly demonstrates the need for your study. You should also briefly describe how you searched the literature, maybe which search engines you used, what keywords you entered. It shows your process. And most importantly, you need to critique previous research, showing how your study will clarify things, or maybe compensate for shortcomings in earlier work. Avoid just summarizing article after article. You need critical and analytical engagement.
And the quality of your sources also speaks volumes, I imagine. Using blogs probably isn't the way to go.
Generally not, no. Decision makers look for citations from highly regarded sources. Academic journals, research monographs, peer-reviewed conference papers sometimes. Websites should be used very sparingly and critically. The quantity, quality, and importantly, the currency of your references are all indicators of your scholarship.
Right, showing you're up to date.
Exactly. And you can present this review as its own section, or sometimes quite effectively, integrate it right into your introduction to directly build the rationale for your study.
Okay, now we get to the real nuts and bolts, the methodology section, the blueprint for your research. This is where you explain how the research will actually be carried out to achieve your aim and objectives.
Yes, this is critical. It needs to be detailed enough, in theory, for another researcher to replicate your study based on your description.
Wow, that's a high bar.
It is, but it ensures clarity. This section is where your what truly connects to your how. It covers your overall research design or strategy, your population, and how you'll sample them, your data collection methods, and how you'll analyze the data you gather.
So, starting with research design, what are the main options there?
Well, broadly, you're often choosing between quantitative research, that's inquiry based on testing a theory using variables measured numerically, analyzed statistically, often viewing truth as objectively measurable. Deductive reasoning.
Numbers and stats.
Right. Or qualitative research, which aims to comprehend a social or human problem, building a holistic picture with words, reporting detailed views, often conducted in natural settings. Inductive reasoning, generally viewing truth as more subjective and context-dependent.
Words and meanings.
Exactly. And of course, you can combine both with mixed methodologies. That might be sequential, where one method follows another, perhaps qualitative exploration leading to a quantitative survey, or concurrent, where both types of data are collected around the same time and then integrated during analysis.
And within qualitative, there are different approaches too, right? Like case studies or ethnography.
Yes, lots of specific qualitative strategies. Ethnography for studying cultural groups, case studies for in-depth investigation of a phenomenon, phenomenology for lived experiences, narrative research using stories, action research aiming to improve social situations. The key here isn't just to list them, but to demonstrate you understand what kind of understanding you're chasing with your research.
Right. Are you trying to measure something precisely across a large group or understand something deeply within a specific context?
Exactly. Your why should dictate your how, your choice of design.
Okay. Then you move into defining your population and sample. You need to clearly state what are your target total population and then the specific sample you'll actually study.
Yes, precisely. Your sampling frame, the group you could potentially draw from, and your sample population, the group you will actually select. And crucially, you need to explain how those participants will be selected. What's your sampling procedure?
So like random sampling versus something else.
Right. Will you use probability sampling, like simple, random, systematic, stratified, or cluster sampling, where everyone in the frame has a known chance of being selected? Or will you use non-probability sampling, like convenience, quota, purposive, or snowball sampling, where selection isn't random, but based on other criteria?
Purposive sounds like you pick people specifically because they know something relevant.
Exactly. For qualitative studies, purposive sampling is very common. You select individuals because they have particular knowledge or experiences relevant to your research question. And you must clearly state your inclusion and exclusion criteria who qualifies for this study and who doesn't.
I know this sounds incredibly technical and maybe a bit dry, but at its heart, it's really about being realistic and ethical, isn't it?
Precisely. I mean, if you propose to conduct in-depth interviews with 300 people for a qualitative PhD study, that immediately flags a feasibility issue for reviewers. It's just probably not doable.
Right. Way too much data, not enough time.
Exactly. Qualitative studies often use smaller, purposive samples, maybe 12 to 20 participants, sometimes more, sometimes less, to gain deep insights. Quantitative studies, on the other hand, typically require much larger sample sizes for statistical power and generalizability. Justifying your sample size isn't just about logistics, it's also about ethical research design, not wasting participants' time on a study that's too small to yield meaningful results, or too large unnecessarily.
That makes sense. So once you know who you're studying, you need to explain your data collection methods. How are you actually getting the information?
Will you gather primary data that's firsthand information you collect yourself, maybe through observation, interviews, which could be unstructured, semi-structured, structured, or focus groups, questionnaires, or even direct experiences? Or will you rely mainly on secondary data, existing published and unpublished materials like books, journals, reports, databases, online materials?
Or maybe a mix?
Often a mix, yes. But you must describe what kind of data will be collected and how you'll collect it. For example, examination of existing policy documents and conducting semi-structured interviews. You need to identify the specific research instrument. You'll use a questionnaire, an interview schedule, or guide.
And should you include those, like, in an appendix?
It's often a good idea, yes.
Right.
Provide detailed descriptions and strong justifications for each method chosen, and attaching draft interview guides or survey questions as appendices really strengthens the proposal. It shows you've thought about the specifics.
Okay, so you've collected all this data. Now you need a solid plan for data analysis. You can't just sit on piles of transcripts or survey results.
Absolutely not. You need to explain how the data will be managed, cleaned, maybe transcribed if it's interviews, and coded. You should mention appropriate software you plan to use. Statistical packages like Stata or SPSS for quantitative studies are common. So, qualitative data analysis software like NVivo for qualitative studies, which helps manage and code textual data. You also need to specify your analytical approaches. Will you use content analysis, thematic analysis, discourse analysis, statistical tests like regression? Be specific about how you'll make sense of the data.
And finally, within methodology, you mentioned rigor or the soundness of the research.
Yes. This is about demonstrating the quality and trustworthiness of your findings. For quantitative studies, the focus is often on validity, internal validity. Are you measuring what you intend to measure? And external validity. Can the results be generalized? And reliability is the measurement consistent. Would you get the same results on repeated trials?
So reliability is like using a measuring tape that always gives you the same number for the same object.
Right.
But validity is whether that tape is actually measuring length accurately or if it's maybe stretched or measuring something else entirely. You could be reliably wrong.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. For qualitative studies, we often talk about trustworthiness, which includes concepts like credibility. Is the finding believable? Transferability. Is it applicable to other contexts? Dependability. Is the process consistent? And neutrality. Is it free from excessive bias? Different terms, but the same goal. Ensuring the research is sound.
Okay. And just a quick mention about the pilot study. Is that always necessary?
A pilot study is essentially a trial run. You test your research instrument, your survey or interview guide on a small scale first. It helps identify ambiguities, measure effectiveness, maybe refine your questions. It's more common, perhaps more feasible for MPhil and PhD levels due to the longer time frame.
Right.
But it's a really valuable step if you can do it. It can save a lot of trouble later.
Okay, great. So now that we've covered the core academic components, the what, why, and how of the research itself, let's talk about planning for success in the real world. That includes timelines, ethics, and, of course, the budget. First up, your research program or timeline.
Yes, this is absolutely vital for demonstrating your project's feasibility. It shows the reviewers you have a coherent and focused direction, and you've thought about the practical steps. You indicate your principal or milestone activities, literature review, ethics approval, data collection, analysis, writing up, and their estimated timeline.
How do people usually present that?
Often in a simple tabular form, or maybe as a Gantt chart, which visually shows the duration and overlap at different tasks. Supervisors also use this as a roadmap for monitoring your progress throughout the project.
I remember hearing a piece of maybe slightly cynical advice about planning qualitative studies timelines, something about multiplying your estimates.
Ah, yes, the old adage. Estimate how long each activity will take, and then triple the time. While maybe slightly exaggerated, there's wisdom there. This leeway is particularly crucial for qualitative research
Why is that?
because it often has an emergent nature. Things might take unexpected turns during data collection. Analysis can be very time-consuming. Having that buffer ensures you have adequate time and, importantly, adequate funding to actually complete the work properly, even with delays.
Good advice. Okay, next, ethical considerations. This feels really important.
It's absolutely crucial. This section is mandatory for any research involving human subjects, potentially animal models, or hazardous materials. You must demonstrate your understanding of protecting participants' rights.
What does that typically include?
Things like ensuring their right to self-determination, they can withdraw anytime, privacy, confidentiality, fair treatment, and protection from discomfort or harm, physical, emotional, social. You need to explain your procedures for obtaining informed consent from participants, making sure they fully understand what's involved before they agree, and often from the research site itself, like a school or hospital.
And you usually need to provide documents for that.
Yes, typically an informed consent form for them to sign, and a participant information sheet explaining the study in clear language should be appended to your proposal. And critically, ethical approval must be obtained from your institution's Human Research Ethics Committee, or HREC,
Right.
before any data collection begins. You cannot start contacting participants or collecting data until you have that formal approval. And a key ethical question reviewers consider is the research design itself ethical? For instance, is it ethical to expose subjects to a study that will ultimately have no real value or contribution? The research itself needs to be worthwhile.
That's a powerful point. And what about the budget? There's this persistent myth that qualitative research is cheap, right? Because you're not buying big equipment, maybe.
It's a complete myth. Qualitative research is not necessarily inexpensive, and its costs can often be quite unpredictable. Think about transcription costs for hours of interviews, travel expenses, maybe compensating participants for their time.
Yeah, it adds up.
It really does. You need to provide an itemized budget with clear justification for all anticipated costs. Personnel, any needed equipment or software, supplies, travel, transcription, dissemination costs like conferences. It should be realistic, appropriate, and honestly, it should probably include an additional allowance for unpredictable disasters, delays, and rising costs. Build into contingency.
Good practice for any project, really. Finally, under planning, a strong proposal often acknowledges potential limitations and pitfalls. Seems counterintuitive, maybe.
Not at all. This isn't about highlighting weaknesses. It's about demonstrating preparedness and good risk management. Acknowledging potential barriers, maybe your aims are interdependent, so if one fails, it impacts others. Maybe you anticipate difficulty recruiting enough participants. Maybe the scope is ambitious. And crucially, proposing alternative strategies to address them shows you've thought ahead.
So you're showing you have a plan B.
Exactly. It demonstrates foresight and boosts confidence that you can handle challenges when they inevitably arise.
Okay, fantastic overview of the components. Now let's talk about some of the most common mistakes that can unfortunately sink even really promising research ideas. And this first one, I think you alluded to it earlier, is probably the #1 mistake I see. A lack of consistency, that breaking of the golden thread.
Indeed. It's so common and so damaging. Your topic, your theoretical framework, your aims, your research questions, your methodology, whatever, they must align perfectly, like the example we discussed. If you start talking about burnout in graduate students, and then later your methodology section discusses recruiting undergraduates, that's a massive, glaring red flag.
It just screams they haven't thought this through.
Precisely. It's not just minor inconsistency. It's often a sign that the core plan isn't truly coherent or well-defined. Every single element of your proposal should logically connect and point back to your central argument, making it feel integrated and, well, bulletproof. Using terms interchangeably without defining them is another way this happens.
Right. Another common pitfall seems to be proposing something completely impractical or just non-viable.
Yes. Aiming too high, or maybe sideways. Proposing something that's just too difficult, too expensive, requires access to data or participants you simply can't realistically get. Maybe it needs specialist skills you don't have and haven't accounted for getting.
So wishful thinking instead of realistic planning.
Exactly. You must ensure your proposed research is genuinely doable within your actual constraints. your time frame, your budget, your skill set, and what's ethically permissible. It needs to be plausible within your specific context.
Then there's the issue we touched on with significance, a lack of perceived value or originality.
Don't just assume the value of your research is obvious to the reader. You have to make it obvious, make it jump off the page. Clearly articulate its significance and its potential contribution, whether that's to academia, to practice, to policy, or to society more broadly.
And it needs to be new in some way.
It needs to be novel, yes, or at least an extension or a new application of existing work. Avoid just repeating what's already been done, unless you have a very strong justification for replication. But remember, novelty can come from context studying a known phenomenon in a new geographical area or with a different population group, can be original and impactful, as long as you clearly make that case.
Okay. And for many people, especially early career researchers, this next one can be a real struggle, demonstrating sufficient understanding.
Yes, this often manifests as using technical terms or jargon you don't fully grasp, maybe just dropping buzzwords without really explaining them. Or sometimes it's a superficial understanding of the broader topic. You need to demonstrate both a solid command of your specific subject area and its various facets, and a clear, high-level understanding of your chosen methodology and its practical implications.
My advice based on that would be, if you're not 100% certain about your methodology or a particular technical term you're using,
Then absolutely consult with someone who is certain. Talk to a methodologist, a statistician, a senior researcher in that area. It will save you a world of pain down the road. Mistakes in the methodology section are particularly damaging because they can lead to unachievable projects or require significant, costly changes once the research is already approved and underway. Don't hesitate to seek expert help rather than trying to fake it.
solid advice. Finally, and this might seem basic, but it's crucial, poor writing and presentation. A sloppy proposal is like showing up to that crucial job interview in your pajamas, isn't it?
It really is. Typos, grammatical errors, awkward phrasing, weak English if it's not your first language, or just a disorganized, hard-to-follow structure, all of these can severely undermine your credibility, even if the core idea is good.
The medium is part of the message.
Absolutely. The quality of your writing inevitably reflects the perceived quality of your thinking. Use clear, concise, professional language. Make good use of subheadings, maybe bullet points, to structure complex information logically. And whatever you do, please avoid rushing the proposal. A half-baked document thrown together at the last minute often leads to outright rejection or requests for major revisions, which just causes delays and frustration. Take the time to think everything through properly and polish your work until it shines.
So there you have it, the core ingredients, the potential pitfalls, the whole shebang for crafting a truly compelling research proposal. It's far more than just a hoop to jump through. It really is a dynamic blueprint for your research success, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think viewing the proposal not as some static assignment you just have to get done, but as a preliminary test, a test of your ability to plan, to anticipate problems, to problem solve creatively, and to communicate your ideas effectively, that perspective will truly set you apart. It's really the first critical conversation you have about your research idea with people who can help make it happen, and clarity, coherence, and strong justification are your most powerful tools in that conversation.
That's a great way to frame it. The most successful proposals, then, don't just state what will be done. They meticulously demonstrate why it absolutely must be done and how, practically, it will be achieved, making it almost irresistible to those committees or funders who can bring it to life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So the final thought for you, our listeners, what surprising gap, what unanswered question will your next research idea fill?
And if this deep dive today sparked more questions, or maybe you're feeling curious about a specific element we discussed, just remember the power of thorough preparation and planning. Keep exploring those ideas, keep questioning your assumptions, and keep refining that proposal.